Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good afternoon for me.
Good morning. Best day of the week.
Best day of the week. It's Monday.
I'm just saying, just in case it's afternoon here, because I've got wine next to you and next to me. And if I'm drinking wine and people really think, for me, it's also morning, I think probably I'm alcoholic. So no, for me, it's afternoon, just to make sure. So
it's also the
listeners, viewers know. Yeah, that's why. So it's
the holiday,
right those days.
We should come up with like a show concept that involves like wine and coffee and wine, feeling fine. Maybe, I don't know.
I think we already have. It's Good Morning Hospitality.
Oh yeah. This show. Let's just not change the name. Well, hey, good morning, guys. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays for all our listeners that are tuning in. Super incredible to be here on this fine morning. I do want to just start it off, or actually afternoon for you, Mr. Ross. But I just want to start off saying thank you. We have a new episode supporter from Hostfully. They wanted to pretty much give a little shout out to all our listeners for tuning in and just being a part of the show. Plus, kicking butt this year. I think it's been pretty incredible that we've all finally made it to the end of 2020. And they also have a great data report. So it's really cool. It captures a lot of stuff from 2020, and I kind of was featured in it, so no big deal. And so it's great to have them a part of the show. And then let's get to you guys. How are you guys been? How's the holidays and all that good stuff?
It's good. Holidays with a 18-19-month-old is I guess not too dissimilar to normal days. They don't fully understand the concept of Christmas. I think Oliver had more fun playing with the wrapping paper and the ribbons than he did with the gifts that came out of the boxes. But we've certainly enjoyed a little bit of a break and stepping away from the computer for a little while.
Sure. Are you guys both playing the typical dad role on Christmas, is cleaning up the wrapping paper and then putting all the toys together while mumbling under your breath while pieces won't fit?
More or less.
How about you, Mr. Ross? How are things over there?
It's nice. It just, mainly it's like eating and drinking, right? So I just sometimes replying some emails. I try to do it in the morning because if I do it at the end of the day, it probably will be misspells and everything. So, but it's good. It's just the same with the kids, right? We've got some kids around here and stuff, and play some Mario Kart. It's always like, this is, I think, one of the best games. Just fun, just enjoy a bit. And yes, I've got 2 kids, right? So one is like a bit more than a year walking around and everything. So still, when you're looking back, and of course, during the Christmas dinners, you just have a discussion like this crazy year, right? I see comments popping up on LinkedIn, like next year, less family time. Those things actually funny. So it is bad, but I hope so as well. I hope things come back a bit to normal. And of course, it's great to spend some time with the family. But I think we are looking forward to like a different year. I think a lot of things happened, actually. It's nice to look back at it, but also just try to look forward now, those days.
I agree. And speaking of looking back at the year, I think it's a good way to segue into this week's topic. Obviously, we're doing a review of 2020. Obviously, COVID-19 being like a big topic, but we're going to try to avoid that and just go into industry reviews of what's happened in certain things. So I think what we'll do first is start off with the Bidruption report, and then we'll do what's with all the noise, and then kind of get into that if you guys are down.
Cool.
What do you say?
I
Are we
like
in?
it.
We in? All right,
I like
let's
it.
do it.
Yes, the startup of the week. And actually, I got a golden tip for the Dutch listeners that know what I mean. So thank you, Mr. Golden. This week, it will be Lifehouse. Lifehouse is actually a company which is actually, as it's written in here also on the screen, it's a hotel startup, but also it's a brand. And what is really cool is that they're combining actually branding. So they build an actually 4-star hotel brand called Lifehouse. Actually, they're combining it with technology. So the decisions, the pricing, it's all based on machine learning, AI, etc. So they're combining actually new technologies with branding. So they're a pretty new brand. I think they started it like 2 years ago. They do quite well. They raised, I think, recently $30 million again. So I think it's a startup really interesting to look into. We discussed earlier this year as well some brands. We discussed some maybe apart hotel brands, etc. And I think this is actually, if you're looking at a brand, it makes sense, right? Not only from marketing perspective, but really a brand which could help you as well with more, which I think technology and making decisions on pricing is super, super important. So we might discuss it later this episode as well. But the start of the week is Lifehouse, this one. Normally I'm addressing also events, what I was attending or looking forward to. In this case, a bit different, right? With the end of the year, this is the last episode. It's more to finish a lot of stuff. I think it's really good to look back actually what we achieved with Bidroom. And it was a crazy year. I think what we saw in March, April is, okay, we have to make decisions. Are we going to downsize the team? Are we going to lay off people? Or what are we going to do? But I said, okay, I strongly believe that in an industry which is, for example, is disrupted or which is in a crisis situation like now, we can also make a difference. So instead of focusing on user growth, it was the planning what I announced to the team in December in 2019. It's okay, let's focus completely on more inventory, more hotels on board. And if you look what we achieved, which makes me super proud, is that we did 2.5 times our target. If you're looking at onboarding new hotels, we're building technology which is super advanced, which also the technology we want to even probably use more also for different clients, as it's so advanced that we're outcompeting competition if you're looking at connectivity infrastructure. And so I'm really proud of what I achieved. I think we made a much better product website. I think it's really good to also use the time efficiently, right? To see, okay, where can we make improvements? Where can we make changes? I think keyword of 2020 is flexibility. We moved people to different areas. We keep them really engaged in what we're doing. So shout out to the team. I'm really proud of what we achieved last year. We did some updates from the team, and now we're looking forward actually 2021. We discussed 2021 next week in this episode. But again, instead of mentioning some events, again, compliments to the team of Bidroom, what we achieved last year. Again, I think we can come out stronger, even it is a crazy year for everybody in travel. But yeah, again, I'm looking forward to what the 2021 will bring us. Thank you.
This week, I wanted to go over generally people's sentiment on travel and where we go from here. There's a general feeling that people need to make up for lost time for travel. And I know I feel it. I'm sure most of us that are in the travel space feel it as well. But Booking.com found that more than 40% of people expected to travel more than they did before the pandemic. And those numbers are even higher for millennials and Gen Z. There's the trips that everyone has planned have also kind of raised the stakes or raised the bar. There's a travel agency that put out a couple fun trips that they're planning for clients. One of them is a desert island survival competition between two families. So I imagine they're being dropped in some remote area, and two families survive for as long as they can before tapping out. Sounds like a TV show, but would also be pretty fun to be a part of. Others are renting castles in Scotland. Others are having a Mamma Mia themed escape in Italy. So The pent up demand for travel is certainly there. I don't have the stat in front of me, but something like $19 billion of unused airline dollars are sitting in people's accounts. So people are ready to go. We just need the green light to do so. And to wrap up the 2020 theme, Will, you're on mute.
Nice. Thanks. I would say, I've been, just coffee is kicking in really good. No, I think it's 100% true. We've all been pretty pent up. Like we just talked briefly, review of the year. And I remember in the beginning, January, February, March, I was traveling more than I ever have in my entire life. And then to finally be in London and then all of a sudden have a lockdown, and then the national emergency declaration happened, was intense. And then now here we are, a year later almost. And I would say it sucks, definitely missing the flights, the people, the cool interactions, and getting to see new cultures and other things like that. So I definitely think that stat is probably understated in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm just curious, as Booking.com is saying it will be increasing 40%, right? I'm not sure. There's so many different like information going on. People say, okay, I'm maybe travel less, but I'm going to travel better. I'm going to travel longer, etc. So I don't know. I don't know. It sounds to me a bit like, okay, 755 people looking at this room a bit. I'm not sure. As you know, my I don't want to say my feelings against Booking might be different as well, but I'm really curious how how it will look like. I think it will start slowly. Yes, it will come back. Of course, it has to be come back. You see vaccinations also in Europe started now those days. But I'm really curious how it will come back. And I still, personally, I think it will be different. I think short-term rental will have a boost, will recover quickly. I think if you're thinking again to have a breakfast, standing in the queue with people around you and taking food from the same cup or whatever, I'm not sure. It's me. I have to see how things will recover. We're outside, and here in Poland now we're just people gonna get in lockdown. Everybody wearing mask. I think this fear will stay for a while. Even though travel will come back, it will be differently. And let's see. I think business travel is impacted mostly,
right? And I think the stat though highlights the millennials and Gen Z, the groups that are least affected by COVID directly, at least, are really pent up. And I misquoted the number. It's actually $35 billion in airline credits, not 19 billion. So massive amounts of people that are just right there ready to get going. But I think you're right, Mike. I think it's not going to happen immediately. And whether it happens in 2021 or it happens in 2022, I think when you have something taken away from you that you take for granted, you don't take it for granted anymore. And I think we're kind of in that phase right now where I'm dying to get over to Europe. I've been back and forth to Europe every year since I was 16, at least once. And luckily or unluckily, I spent 2 days there in March before I had to come home. Otherwise 2020 would have been a wash. But, I think things like that are important in my life, being able to mix up my daily. And it's hard for me as an extrovert and as someone who likes to get on airplanes to walk across my house and into my office every day instead of driving up to the airport.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's common, right? We all choose to do something in hospitality and travel. I think the reason we're working in this industry, the reason I started Bidroom before a different company in travel is because my biggest passion is travel. And I think it's the most important. You always do what is your passion, right? So I think, we can congratulate you by being a podcaster for a year now, right? So I think you just made this move as well, and you love what you're doing. I think it's so important. I think that's why we're all working in hospitality. And it's even harder, I think, when if this is your passion, you're starting a company, you're working for a company, which is your passion. It's it drives you, and then it holds you, right? again, I think everybody, also the people listening, I think they're all in hospitality. That's why they're listening to this podcast. I think it's. I said to my wife this morning, we're so looking for just go for a weekend away, just staying in a hotel and just have a dinner in a restaurant like normal without fear. And this looks like a dream. And before it was normal. And this is. So I really hope, like at least in 2021, we have a few moments like this that we just not have this constant fear and can enjoy, because travel, I think, is one of the most things there is out there to see different cultures. And I think I really miss it a lot. And I think most people are listening as well. So let's see what 21 brings, but we're looking more to 20,000 to next year. We do it next week, right? So, but again, it was a crazy year when I just look back at it, and especially those days when you're sitting with Christmas dinners, you're looking back like, it was a weird year. You see valuation of Airbnb was even higher than before pandemic. You see, it was just I just don't like the word crisis. It's, for me, just a crazy year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and on, you touched on it, Michael, and I was at Click, I guess 2019, which is Booking's big event, and Glenn Fogel was on stage in a t-shirt and running shoes, which I love. That's totally my attire style. But the t-shirt was a Mark Twain shirt that said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness." And I think that's part of why I'm so passionate about travel, because you can get wrapped up in the bubble that you live in your hometown or home city or home state, and forget that there's the way people live is totally different all over the world. And travel is really the only way that you can immerse yourself and understand it, even if it's just for a few days.
But it is recharge as well, right? It's not only the culture and everything. It just, if you're sitting at home, you need to recharge yourself, and just being in a different environment. I just know my last long travel was in the US for over 2 weeks. We're visiting some places, including the Airbnb office and the Apple office, etc. So really cool. And then we should come back 2 months later, right, for a follow-up. We joined the Plug and Play Accelerator program, and then everything changed. And then still, it was not the same, right? They moved it into online, and just, I should come back. And I don't know, I just miss it so much. And also, it's recharging you, right? To be in a different environment, different energy. I think that's what all people need. And you see a lot of people are just, I don't know, close to depression, and you can see it, right? And I think people really need to be out there to have this dinner, to have this travel somewhere else. And I think what you said is you need this. I think it's in the genes of people. You just need to be around other people to have this social contact. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to some recovery. It will be still, I think it will be not as before, but again, I think we learned a lot as well. I think when you're looking at people, how they're traveling now, you can see a lot of shifts were made in hotels. You see the contactless, the way of, like, for example, I think the minibars and the room service increased a lot again. You can see when hotels might be considering to stop with it. And again, I think you see the shift now in vacation rent. We discussed last week the move into online education, for example. Also in hospitality, so a lot of things change actually the last year, and I think those things maybe what should happen the coming 10 years, maybe it's actually happened in 1 year, this acceleration of technology, innovation, automation. So I think at the end it should be there anyway where we are now, like if we're looking at innovation, but actually just accelerated because we had to, because there was no other way.
What are the 3 big takeaways, and I'll lead the way while you think about it, that came out of 2020? For me, I think Airbnb going public, and I know we've had full episodes on this, is a big milestone for the industry, not only because it went at such a high price, but I mean, 1,000 millionaires were made that day when it went public. And these are people that are passionate about what they're doing. And I see a lot of that money as likely to flow into new business, new ventures, particularly within the segment, within travel, within rentals or hospitality in general, whether it's castles or something else. I think it's good for the industry, and it's gonna help seed a lot of the next generation of travel startups.
Well, you
Another,
see what you mentioned is this, for example, I just saw that in Lifehouse when I was preparing this part, you see, of course, their Taya Ventures, which is investing only in travel. But for example, our friend Aston Kutcher, for example, he invested in Airbnb early stage. I think also now he invested, for example, in Lifehouse. So I think also people who made money in travel now they say, okay, there's a lot of potential to keep investing in travel. So I think this will be also maybe a trend, right? What you said, a lot of people made a lot of money on the IPO of Airbnb. Unfortunately, I didn't, but still, maybe IPO will be the next year. No, in a few years, it's too early. But it is interesting to see some people who just made money. They're reinvesting it again in travel because there's still a lot of possibilities, and travel can be booming. And you see with Airbnb, the valuation I just mentioned is higher than before pandemic. Even if I was okay, and we discussed it might go down after a few days or weeks. I just checked this morning, or just checked just now, and it actually went up again. So it's still higher than the price of when they went actually public. So it is impressive to see when everybody thought, okay, after a few days it goes down. And so, yes, the valuation is still there. They're still more valued higher than our friends of Booking.com. So let's see. But I think it's interesting to see that. And I hope, because we're also looking now, are we going to do new investment round? Is this from investors coming back? Because before travel was super interesting for investors to invest in, right? And we saw it as well. We're discussing. It's a constant process, right? And in the startup, you're constantly discussing new rounds, etc. We saw in March, April when we were discussing with a few, they were scared: should we invest in travel or not? Is it really when it's coming back? Because nobody knew how long it will take. And I think now people see, okay, there's a vaccine, everything coming. It's other day that there is this Fiverr report. What is it? Was like 90% it will help. You saw everything went sky high. So I think investment also in travel will come back. I think 2020 wasn't a bad year for investment in travel, but it will come back in the incoming year.
I think there's probably an even greater appetite to get invested in travel now because the feeling that you can get it at a discount. And I mean, I would suspect there's a number of companies that are either closing funding or going to be closing funding here in the near future. I know a lot of, and actually some will probably go away, and that's okay. I think at least in the short-term rental segment, there's probably too many vendors, and the cream will rise to the top. But I think the next key takeaway that I have is it's definitely a short-term rental focus, less hotel focus, but it's on regulations. California is currently under a no hotel, no short-term rental regulation, which is absolutely mind-blowing. You can't gather in a short-term rental for Christmas with your family or for New Year's with your friends. That's mind-blowing. But a lot of these cities, smaller cities that are now hotbeds for tourists because they're drive-to markets, are experiencing surges like they've never seen before in demand. But surges in demand can be problematic for small towns that don't have the infrastructure set up to handle it. Dealing with neighbor issues, noise complaints, house parties, trash, parking, COVID, right? Like not to beat a dead horse, but these are things that these small towns have never dealt with before. So I'm a bit worried and a bit curious how regulations play out in those markets where, last year you would have never guessed that those markets would consider regulating short-term rentals. Now they are. I know intimately a number of markets that are quite surprising for me that are looking at it, and then I'm sure a lot more that I don't know about are looking at it. And the last theme that we have also spoken about this year on the show is flexibility. And if your business isn't set up to flex and ebb and flow with all the changes that are going on, you're destined for failure. This year we saw short-term rentals become long-term rentals. We saw hotels become recording studios and offices. And it's, Airbnb even went into the long-term rental segment. Booking did as well. These are things that we would have never suspected would happen. So I think the three big big events that happens that are worthy to keep an eye on is where do the Airbnb millionaires' investments flow? How do regulations play out in short-term rentals because of all the problems that we've seen during COVID? And then how can you ensure the flexibility of your business, of your segments within the industry and remain flexible in 2021?
Yeah, those are really good points.
I think the flexibility, I advise that we move the team, right? But we, for example, we also went into mid-stays. We didn't bedrooms. Okay, this is a trend. Do it. Just even though build a temporary MVP, but do it because we can. And then it went quite well. So and this is saying what we did, right? So we also saw there's some different interests and different accommodations. We add more filters regarding on flexibility, cancellations, free cancellation, etc. Before it was just you see all of them, but now there was a filter on top only shows free cancellation. So you have to be, and I think that's also an advantage of being a startup. You're more agile, right? You can make changes, and you saw that if Thomas Cook, I think, filed for bankruptcy. You see big ones disappearing because they not have the capability to be agile, to make moves, and to be flexible as a company. When we said, okay, we're just moving people, we're just responsible for getting more members, customers on board, travelers, moving into another area, which is, okay, getting more hotels on board. I mentioned we just did a massive growth in onboarding of hotels because we were flexible. But I think when you have an organization and when you have a customer support, which is actually supporting your travelers, and you have a couple thousand working there, you saw with Booking how many layoffs they had to do because they're focusing on travelers, and transactions was limited. So I think it's really important that this flexibility, agile working, has a lot of advantages, right? And again, what you see, I think your second point was what you address is this short-term rental. If we see, I spoke with one of the VCs last week, and said, okay, where is your focus in the coming year? And he said, actually, two things, is short-term rental and technology. And it is interesting to see is, okay, they see that short-term rental, and you see, of course, they might see, okay, that the IPO of Airbnb might influence them as well, but you see they see also the recovery is coming back quicker in short-term rental. And VCs, I think, is really important. Like if you're looking at venture capitals, there's the ones who just on top of the industry, right? They know exactly they think, or they know exactly what's going to happen, because they're just investing a lot of money in something specifically. So they're doing a lot of deep dive in trends. And you can see with them, the major brands, Accor, etc., also went into vacation rental. So I think there's a huge grow in there. I'm still curious if there'll be, Lifehouse is a brand. You saw we call Sonder and everything. I think there'll be more brands popping up. I think it's strong because we all mentioned I'm staying in an Airbnb. I think we discussed this one. It's like Googling if you're searching something on the internet, or your Airbnb if you're staying in a short-term rental, even though you're not always booking on an Airbnb, you call it an Airbnb. I think you will see more brands popping up. I think so. I think this is good, quality brands, specific boutique styles, etc. So I think it will be a trend of 2021 as well. Again, I'm not looking for too much about next year because we do this next week in our episode. But again, I'm really I think all of us learned a lot the last year. And I think it's also take this 2020 as a learning, right? How to prepare your company, to prepare your infrastructure and everything to be agile. How can you move away? You can see airlines, they're stuck. I think Michael G lost his points on Delta. I don't know, or they were postponed. I don't know. No, you kept them? Okay. But there's a lot of things to look into, right? Okay, how are you dealing with relationship with your members? And of course, and some people call me the Elon Musk of the membership economy. It's like, I'm really curious how this will develop. You saw a trend in 2020 when TripAdvisor announced this. We are in subscriptions. Citizen M, they went to subscription services. So I think this is also a trend. So I think we'll get a lot of learnings from 2020. And so at the end, of course, it was a really bad year, one of the worst years ever for the hospitality or travel. But I think we can learn a lot from it. And you can see where we supported restaurants by delivery, because delivery is people just expecting. And if your favorite restaurant is also delivering, why not? You don't always want to sit in a restaurant, especially now when it's not possible. So I think it's take it all, and that's my advice to many, and I advise a few startups as well. Take it as a learning. It's terrible what happened, but take it as a learning, and make sure you take those learnings and use it, because then you can come out stronger eventually, because you're more agile than the corporates. So, and you see the corporates as well, they're really looking now, okay, can we invest in startups? And I think that will be a trend of next year, that the corporates, the CVCs, maybe some airlines, I know some insights, well, maybe some airlines or alliances, is okay, can we look into startups investing? You see what Lufthansa, they have the innovation hub. I think this will be a new trend as well, because they see that they're more agile. So I'm actually when they talk about it, I'm super excited for next year already. So I'm getting a lot of energy from it. So
I was going to say, like, I think one thing that you guys have both mentioned a lot, which is technology. And one thing that I think we're really seeing a lot of, and speaking of trends, will be branding. I think proper, like when it comes to, speaking of Hostfully in the beginning of the episode, their data report discovered that the biggest percentage of property managers and hosts and operators, especially in the B&B section as well, is focusing on tech to improve their tech stack and to understand it better, because they understood how important it was to have this automation, but also like, things like Breezeway coming up with this new feature where when reservations are canceled or modified or pushed back or like changed, it changes the back end scheduling for housekeeping and maintenance as well automatically, instead of you having to go back in, saving the host or the property manager time. And we're seeing a lot of stuff like this becoming the go-to. Like, we need more features like this. We need more tech to be, I guess, like be able to keep up with us and keep up with the operations. And then of course branding, we talked about Airbnb and the IPO, but one of the big things that happened in April and in March is that, millions of hosts and property managers lost millions of dollars to free cancellations and with no backing. And so a lot of people are focusing on brand and building their own house on their own land instead of others in other ways to phrase it. So it'll be interesting, like, companies like Lifehouse, I think focusing on the brand and the tech of, the storytelling. I think it's something that we've built our industry on, as storytelling, telling a good story and telling it right to the right audience. Golden, you talk about, 3 things you've learned. And I think one of the things that for me this year I've learned is who my audience is. Like, I've, officially been podcasting for a year, full-time, no job. When I started, I thought my audience was property managers and hosts and people that were operating on the ground. But then I'm finding out it's more people in the industry. It's service providers, it's front desk staff, it's bellmen, it's, property managers, it's restaurateurs, you name it. So like finding out your audience and then communicating a proper story, but then also, picking up on these things is pretty key and important. So I think we're going to see that hopefully, dial in through 2021 as well.
Yeah, I think to address, and I think what you mentioned is data, right? We didn't mention this one, but I think we would all address to make decisions. If you're doing innovation or automation, I think it's all coming from data, right? You just say you need to know your audience, you need to know your clients, and I think data is going to be more important as well for recovery, because you just know exactly which areas, how people should travel. And we saw as well that people want to stay longer, adjust your product or modify it or etc. So I think data is one of the keywords also for next year.
We probably got 100 times better at data at NoiseAware during this time. We spent a lot of time cleaning up the back end, getting our systems, getting rid of our technical debt. And when we did so, we're now able to pull out a lot of really cool data from our system. So yeah, it's going to be a fun 2021, but we'll get into that next week.
Sweet. I think that's a great way to end it, guys. We'll have a great new year. Have fun with the families, and I will see you guys next Monday.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you 2 places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast.